Comrades, this is Chief Guard of the Republic Radio Show with your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Burvid every Saturday noon to 1 on WRMN 14 a.m. 1410 a.m. The Fox River Valley Media Network streaming on WRMN 1410.com. Studio call-in number here is 847-931-1410. That's 847-931-1410. The text number, if you don't want your voice heard on the air, is 505-926-1410, or you could hit us up on the YouTube Live channel for WRMN 1410's channel. And how you doing, Paul?
Good. How are you? I'm
doing okay. I'm going to give a shout-out to a couple things here. The Chicago Sports Journal, CHI-sportsjournal.com. That's CHI sportsjournal.com. 708-370-3401. It's a small newspaper focusing on sports and smaller sports venues as opposed to the White Sox, the Bears, the Cubs, or the Bulls. You got the smaller teams in there. You call 708-370-3401. Talk to Fred Colantonio. Fred Colantonio. Fred, if I mispronounce your name, call in and let me know. The next issue is coming out 27 August 2025, so you can find this paper in a lot of places where you might find the Reader or a lot of free newspapers out there. And it has a lot of information, some good articles, and if you want to advertise in there, that'd be great. My other shout out is, the Dunkin' Donuts veterans. We're meeting at the Bunker Hill Woods over in off Caldwell near Niles. Right, the Cook County Forest Preserve over there, Bunker Hill Woods, every Tuesday, 9 a.m. So come out and join some other veterans. There's no qualifications to join, and there's no dues. And one more thing, my good buddies over at the Blue Box Cafe had another great. This coffee is on par with the coffee I got when I was in Germany in Stuttgart. Not the Army coffee, but the stuff that I paid for in town. Really good coffee. This stuff is just as good. Sandwiches are nice. The people are nice. It's just down the street here on Chicago Avenue in Elgin. It's a great place, Doctor Who themed. That's why it's the Blue Box Cafe. All right, and now I got that out of the way, Paul. So what interesting happened to you this week?
Kind of a lot. I went met a couple of people for lunch, but I'm glad you brought this up because two things. Yesterday, but actually all week, is the 80th anniversary in the victory over Japan.
VJ Day, yes.
And I think it should go, I think we should not let it pass. Most of those guys now, if they're still alive, are pushing 100 or over 100. And what they did was a wonderful thing. And, to later General Tibbetts from the crew from the Enola Gay and the boxcar crew. A lot of us wouldn't be here today if they didn't go on their mission, because I know my dad was on an LST and they were getting ready to go to Japan for the big invasion and stuff. So
yeah, a lot of the guys that survived Europe were set. They weren't just demobilized; they were set to go over to the Pacific.
Right. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the good work of those two air crews and the people that planned it. So, it shouldn't go without passing. And then a little bit off topic, but kind of aside, because we are primarily concerned with veterans. I don't know if you're familiar with the CMP. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
That's a funded company through the federal government, the civilian marksmanship program.
Oh, no, yeah, I am familiar with the civilian marksmanship program. I just didn't put the CMP together with it.
Yeah, well, they've undergone some changes lately, and I'm giving this to some of the veterans out there because you don't have to do an element of it. But they've recently reduced the prices of their 1917 bolt-action rifles. And to believe it or not, you could order them online now. You have to submit documents, but they've also, they get reclaimed material from other countries, and they're running out of them. So they've, like your post and stuff. If
We
your
have two of
post-
them. We have two of them at my post.
If your post returns those rifles, they are now what they do. They're calling reclaiming them, and they're taking the weld spots off, and they're getting them back into service, and they're selling them. I was just looking on the phone before we came on air. The reclaimed one, there's one group available for $800, which is a kind of a fantastic price. So that's kind of designed for veterans. The only thing is you have to be a member, not of the NRA, but of an NRA affiliated organization, which is in Illinois, it's the Illinois State Rifle Association, I think, or
Member?
Guns Save Lives or Gun Owners of America. You have to have your FOID card. If you're a veteran, you have to submit proof that you're a veteran. Otherwise, you have to submit proof that you did some marksmanship skills, and then you have to submit proof of your birth. Like either a Social Security card or a voter registration card, and then you can actually order them online. And it's kind of a neat thing. They just started doing that within the last 2 weeks, but I think a lot of veterans groups might be interested. And then there's a limit of 12 purchases per year. But they also have a 22 target rifle that they do have up. And it's kind of nice because I remember buying some a few years ago. I got these 22 rifles for like $30, and they were Mossberg. The latest one, I believe, is a Remington. So, that's kind of geared toward veterans, but it's also geared to anybody who might listen because, and it's a pretty good program. They promote gun safety and they promote shooting sports. They have two big ranges, one in Ohio and one in, I believe, Anniston, Alabama. So it's kind of a good program, so that's kind of my highlight for the week.
So Paul, the 1917, the M19, yeah. I thought it was an M1903.
No, they had them last year, and I was able to purchase one. Thank goodness for my friend Marla. She said, well, why don't you go get one? And I got one of the last ones of those available. But the 1917 is the rifle that Alvin York used. What happened is it's interesting. We were making rifles for England, the pattern 1914, which was a 303. And then when we got into the war, they knew they wouldn't have enough Springfields, and we didn't really have an automatic rifle other than the BAR and then the Thompson. So we went into these. They used the 1914 pattern and converted it to a 1917, which was 306, hence 1917. And they're made either by Winchester, Remington, or Remington's offshoot company, Eddystone, from Eddystone, Pennsylvania. And a lot of people say that that's even a better rifle than the 1903 Springfield. And I think it holds actually 6 shots instead of 5. So, and they do not use the 1903 bayonet. They use the actual British 1907 bayonet, and hence, Bix bayonets, whatever.
You got one of those 1903 bayonets, don't you, Paul?
I do, from you, and it was. And the interesting thing is, you gave it to me, and it was an experimental one because they really weren't using fiberglass back then. And then
it was resin over canvas, I think.
It was, and I was able to repurpose that because I was able to figure out a way to use epoxy, and then I used clothespins to close it, and then with the blade, it had those weird colors of look feathery, like red and white. I took the blade down to bare metal, and then I blued it actually in 300 applications, and instead of using water, after each bluing process, I used alcohol. And then I was able to get a reproduction set of grips for that. And then I had for the catch, I had some extra parts from more recent ones, and I was able to recondition that one.
Nice. Yeah. There's a lot of old stuff in Haiti. A lot of old stuff in Haiti. Yeah. So,
sure.
So that's nice, because we should, one of the reasons we should absolutely have trained marksmen, and we talked about it several times over our show, is just that it intimidates our competitors. I'm not going to say enemies right now, but any possible invaders against mass invasion of the United States in an organized force, all right? Because I'm going to talk about mass invasion in the United States in a disorganized force in a little bit. And I believe, so the subject I want to talk about today was the use of the National Guard in Washington, D.C. And because now the legacy media is all over this, and it's like, oh no, undeclared martial law, and everything's going to get taken over, and it's just going to be a dictatorship because they're using the National Guard in the way in the way it should be used, and this is terrible. This is awful. And it just makes me laugh, because I was thinking about the secondary and tertiary effects of a competent approach to crime in D.C. and what's going to happen with that. And the first thing that hits me is that they're going to put you, like my dad had said, he was a detective, 32 years on the police department, and he told me something, because he did crime analysis for a while. And he says, you don't get rid of crime, you just push it into a different neighborhood. And so what's going to happen is you push all the crime out of D.C., it's going to go one of two places: Maryland or Virginia. And oh my God, those are blue states, right? And so now they're going to have to deal with the blue state policies, with an extra amount of trouble coming their way. Whereas the federal area, which has no federal voting authority, they can't sway an election. They have popular vote. They do not have part of the electoral college. All right. So yeah, their votes mean nothing in presidential election. So they in getting rid of the crime, you're going to move it out of Washington, D.C. and move it into one of the neighboring states. And those neighboring states are going to have problems with that. And it's going to be financially burdensome on them and everything else. And not nice thing, but the neighboring states that border Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland, that's not like Baltimore, all right? Baltimore is a little bit on the hinterland. It's like 40 miles out, right? So you land at the airport, and Baltimore is a little iffy. It's a little sketchy there, right? But all the neighborhoods around Washington, D.C., in Maryland and in Virginia are very high-priced neighborhoods.
Chevy Chase, Maryland, and all of those.
Alexandria, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, very nice areas, right? With very, expensive place to live. And they're happy pushing all the disenfranchised people. I'm trying to think of nice names, right? Disenfranchised people.
They want to exclude the undesirables out.
Yeah, it's like when what was it, Texas or Florida shipped everyone up to Martha's Vineyard? And how long did it take them to get rid of them there?
Yeah, real fast.
Real fast. They went somewhere else. But here, if you shipped them up to Martha's Vineyard again, and Martha's Vineyard screamed, ICE would be right there deporting them all. Yeah. Right. And you people over there turned you in. Those nice people that are voting and telling themselves they're nice people, right? Because it doesn't affect them. They're the ones that turned you in, dude. And let them know that on the press. And see the confusion. But so they're like, you can't do that. You know, you're the president. And I think, no, Washington, D.C., there's 50 state National Guards. Then there's the National Guard in Guam. There's a National Guard in the American Virgin Islands. There's National Guard in Puerto Rico. There's one more out there. American Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. No, I'm not sure the 54th there, but you have Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., as opposed to all the other national guards.
Would there be one in Samoa, maybe?
Could be. As opposed to all the other National Guards, right, belongs to the President of the United States exclusively. He is the commander-in-chief of the Washington, D.C. National Guard. They fall under his authority, so whenever he activates them, they fall under Title 10 authority of the president, which is complicated because he doesn't fall under Title 32, which is the Posse Comitatus Act. So they can't be used in a law enforcement capacity. The National Guard cannot be used in that law enforcement capacity, but they can, if you have one ICE agent and he's got to go, or one or two ICE agents, and they got to go into an area which isn't very friendly to them, they could bring a platoon of National Guard in to protect them so they could do their federal law. Now, the National Guard isn't enforcing the law. They're protecting the people enforcing the law. There's the difference there. So when you send it into California, they were protecting the ICE agents. They weren't rounding people up. They were just there to protect the ICE agents. Right? And so the press, right, the press thinking that this is martial law. It's not martial law because they're not enforcing any laws. They're just protecting a building. Like when they had the 2021 inauguration. Remember they brought in 20,000 National Guard guys?
Right.
They weren't there to enforce any laws. They were there to protect the property and to protect the personnel. So it wasn't a law enforcement mission, it was a protection mission, and that's basically what the Guard is there for. So to bring the National Guard into Washington, D.C., they're not enforcing the laws, but they're a presence. They're a presence there. Their sheer presence is going to keep people from getting mugged, shot, or whatever. If you see, you're not going to beat up anyone in front of a squad of National Guard guys and say, you can't do anything to me, because they will do something. They're human beings. And by seeing that, they're going to take action to protect someone. And then you call in, if you're on federal property, the park police, because most of the property there is park police, right? I wrote down a list of all these agencies, right? So you have
the Capitol Police too.
Yeah, the Capitol Police, but they protect the Capitol, which is the Congress. So they're on there protecting the congressional Capitol, right? The D.C. property. So you got the Metropolitan Police Department, which is about 3,200 sworn officers. And I believe that as much as I believe that Chicago has 12,000 sworn officers. You know, I'm like, oh, give me those numbers. I don't believe it because I haven't seen 2,000 of them. Right? And that comes if you're looking at how many police officers over per shift. It's 23 officers per square mile. If you take the land that isn't federal land or federal park land, the 23 Metropolitan Police officers per square mile. And what was I thinking? The difference? Oh, I didn't write down my numbers great. It per watch. All right. So 70. Okay. 51 divided by 17. Blah 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 blah. I don't know. I got my numbers all mixed up here. Can't remember. Anyways, there's per capita and per mile, there's a lot more police officers, local police officers in D.C. than there are in Chicago. So you're thinking about the crime and statistics and everything. They have all these, they have more police officers, so they should have less crime, right? But per capita, they're higher crime. Even with more police officers, which only tells me one thing, right? Is that the police officers aren't allowed to do their jobs or are incapable of doing their jobs. In my experience, they're not allowed to do their jobs. 90% of police officers, maybe even higher, they just want to go out there and fight crime in any way they can. But if you handcuff them and punish them by suspensions or threats of getting fired, losing your way to feed your family and everything, they're gonna look out for their own well-being first, as everyone will, So you're gonna look to the side when things happen, right? But not only that, you got to talk about all the universities that are in Washington, D.C., and they have special police. They have their own police departments that handle crime on the university campus. Then you got their Metro Police Department. I mean, Chicago used to have the CTA police, but now it's just rolled into the Chicago Police Department. So, responsible for safety on the L and on the buses is the same Chicago police officers, but D.C. still has the Metro Police Department. So, coming up. And this is on top of everything else. Federal Protective Service, FBI, BATF, U.S. Park Police, Capitol Police, Defense Protective Services, the printing office police. The printing office police. They're keeping people from stealing high quality paper, if you know what I mean for that. But I'm just saying that my opinion is that there's more crime than there should be. And why is that, Paul?
Because they're not enforcing the laws.
That's right.
They don't want the people arrested.
That's correct, because that makes them look bad and feel bad, and then other people say, "Oh, that's terrible." All right. And
a lot of baby mamas complaining that their
boy didn't do nothing.
Their children's or their kids' fathers locked up.
Yes. So if you come in and you have no skin in the game, you're a lame duck president right now. Right? You're not running for re-election. You have no skin in the game, and you look at your options. So you really want to stick it to the people that have been sticking it to you. And I don't think they're thinking this way, but it works out. It works out. You send in your feds.
Well, after the break, I wanted to make a point.
Okay, make your point after break.
Sounds good.
See you in a few minutes. Nuts, right? They're absolute nuts for power. Tell you how to live, how you can defend yourself every which way. But they have this whole horde, what we call the horde, the mob out there, right? The mob. And they use the mob against everyone else as their thugs. I think everyone's seen A Clockwork Orange, right? Not everyone out there. I don't think people would know, but the thugs end up becoming the police for the state. It kind of backfires a little bit. But so when you're encouraging that, you're encouraging the power, right? And the press, rather than limit the power of government, in my opinion, the legacy media wants to share the power of government. They want to be in that power thing. Hey, what do you want me to say, to make you look good, right? And then you just shake your head at everything else that I say, and then I look good too. So that's in my opinion right there. So if you have lawlessness, now how do you infiltrate a country?
From within is the easiest way.
One way is how do you get people in?
You send them in ahead of time.
Yeah. And what's the best way to hide?
In plain sight.
In a crowd. to hide in a crowd. So if you have 20 million people or 2 million people cross the border, and you have 100 trained and motivated fifth columnists coming in, terrorists, right? It's easier for them to get across the border if they're just with this crowd, or to get ignored. You get 100 of them and you just, wave them through. I give them a fake name. I have been fingerprinted in the United States. I go through, there's no problem for them, right? And now I'm in the country and pretty much undocumented and untraced. Rather, no one had to drop me in with a parachute, right? I didn't have to get into frogman equipment and swim in from the ocean, the barren thing, right? I wasn't smuggled in. Well, maybe I was smuggled in a boxcar or whatever, but I'm here. I'm a sleeper cell. And that they were the press was, that's funny because they're going against their whole thing. The press was going, oh, you can't attack the Iranians because there might be lots of Iranian sleeper cells in the United States and they may blow us up. And I'm like, that makes no sense. So you're admitting that the Iranians have some sort of gun to our head with sleeper cells here, so we can't do anything to them. So then we go to try to get rid of these sleeper cells and you're screaming, oh no, they're just immigrants. Undocumented immigrants. See, they wordsmith. That's their job. That's what they went through college for. I can barely spell cat. But I could pass a logic test. But these people, they have no logic. They wordsmith. They put words together. They create nice words. Oh, illegal immigrant, undocumented migrant. What sounds better, right? So that's their job there. And so far from being the current fourth estate, is all these guys on social media. And they are battling with oligarchs. They talk about Putin being an oligarch and anything. He ain't even close. He ain't close to build. He ain't close to, who's the guy that owns Twitter again? No, not Twitter. Not Twitter. He used to own Twitter. I'm talking about Facebook guy, right? Mark Zuckerberg.
Okay.
Zuckerberg, right? Zucky there.
Yeah.
He's got his people trained that if you say the wrong thing, boop, you're gone. Boink, 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 you're gone. There are some other alternate social media sites, but they're not popular. They're not advertised. They don't come in the App Store on your phone. Hey, there's some out there that I know of that every social media that toes the line with wokeness and liberalism, right? You could get an app for your iPhone. The ones that don't toe that line, you can't get an app for your iPhone. There's no app for it. They don't allow it in their store. It's not free trade anymore. They select who they will put in your store. So they're kind of selecting that, and some people are just like, if it's not in that app store, they're not looking any further. Most people don't, the room looks real clean. Well, let's open this closet and look under the rug. It's Finnegan's closet. I just shoved everything into the closet. And they're not trained to do that. They just look at the front. But there are other sites out there, and they're pushing through. And when they get something to go viral on the other sites, then that becomes your fourth media, your fourth estate. Your fourth estate. When stuff starts getting released, and here's how to try to control that. It's flat earther. So you have an account set up there that's supposedly a real person. And they're saying a lot of conservative stuff, but then they go into their flat earth policies. And they're just like, basically they call every conservative a flat earther. Oh, you don't have science, you're flat earther. And they're pretending to be a conservative, and then when people look at their opinions, which seem to be a conservative opinion, and then they look a little further and they see this flat earth stuff and they just dismiss them, dismiss all their opinions, all of them. It's real cool psyop the way that works. You know, I used to, my former father-in-law, God bless, what a great guy. What a great guy, you know. He was very conservative, very conservative. And he, you know, Rush Limbaugh was in his prime back then, you know. And I says, well, I really don't like Rush Limbaugh. And he goes, why? I says, because I think he's a shill for the liberals. I think, and I'm not saying anything bad about Rush, but he was a big guy, right? He was arrogant, all right? Boisterous, smoked a big cigar, looked like your typical fat cat conservative that you would make a cartoon. If I was to make a cartoon picture of a conservative, right, to make him look bad, I would just take a picture of Rush Limbaugh, make it a line drawing, boom, I'm done, right? And that way the liberals can go and say, hey, look at this Rush guy, right? This is what all conservatives are. But if you had a more normal looking person, softer spoken and everything, he wouldn't get the radio time that Rush got. And you really can't be a soft-spoken person on the radio, can you?
No.
No. So I don't want to be a screamer, but that's the type of conservative I am, right? And I don't want to be mistaken for one of these flat earth guys, but that's the way these liberals battle it. They create a false personality, almost like a fifth columnist within the conservative circles that's a flat earth type. And if someone doesn't know what I mean by flat earther, call me. I'll explain it a little bit. So we got a call.
Welcome, caller.
Yeah, hi, it's Cleveland Dennis. I just want to say about Rush Limbaugh, and he would take drugs and was high on line. I remember back in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, I'd catch him midday when I was working at the airport, and I go, hey, guy, from this speech. It came out, it was true. I love the show, guys. I'm listening. I like everything you present. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleveland Dennis. All right. So you get where I'm going with this, Paul?
I do. I do. You know, unfortunately, I think that that's true in a lot of cases because I mean, if you look at these people, and it's sad because I think a lot of them don't believe what they say, and they say it because they know that that's their audience, and they're really careful to espouse that. But I think in private, you'll see that they're more, they're not as conservative as they actually portend to be on whatever media they're on. And I know that for a fact because I used to watch Fox a lot, and I don't have cable anymore. I pretty much get all my stuff through YouTube now. But you could see they would espouse something. But if you look back on their history, they had a different. When they were at a different network, they espoused a different thing, and it's true from some of the stars that leave like Fox or a conservative outlet, and then they go to like a MSNBC or CNN, and then they revert back to the way they probably really are. So I think a lot of them do it for self-preservation and self support. And I don't think they're as conservative as you would, or as they project themselves to be, or that they really are.
Yeah. So, like, the two sides of the coin, conservatism and liberalism, and the center side of the coin, you know, if it lands on its edge, right? Where I try to stay, the center side of the coin is to hold to my own personal beliefs and standards, right? I'm not which way the wind blows, right? So, like, I'm a Chicago police officer, Chicago detective. Right? I've seen a lot of crime. I've seen a lot of heinous crime. I've seen heinous crime where probably the person deserves the death penalty. I'm saying deserves. That's kind of bad for me to say even. And they say, well, I'm absolutely against the death penalty, 100% against the death penalty. And they go, well, why? These people murdered and everything else. I says, I'm pro-life. I don't think legally we have a justification through the law to say we're going to kill someone, no matter how many people they heinously killed. If they manage to survive the shootout with the police or whatever, then, put them in a deep, dark hole, put them in the Chateau d'If for 15 years, for the rest of their life. If you don't know what the Chateau d'If is, read The Count of Monte Cristo, all right? But, yeah, put them in a deep, dark hole, but, let God take them. Or let them take themselves out. Let them starve themselves to death or whatever. But I believe that you shouldn't murder a baby, That's where I stand on that, and I don't fluctuate. Well, what if this? What if that? What is that? No, I can't. I can't fluctuate. What if it was your child? What do I do? I says, well, I hope I don't have to go through that, but I'm gonna hold on to my beliefs there. Exactly what you said, Paul, is these guys are media personalities, and they go what way the wind blows. Or they sniff the wind and they say, whoa, I don't know about this. I mean, one of these guys came out there, and not a doctor, not a medical or whatever, but when they were given the shot, the mRNA gene therapy to fight COVID. I'm not going to call it a V word, all right, because it isn't, all right? And he took it and he says, now, I'm taking it, but you have the right to refuse, and I stand behind that. And if you don't want to take it, that's fine with you. That's your decision to make and everything. And I stand with your decision to make. If you want to take it or whatever, I stand with your decision there, too. And then I hit these guys that I would listen to once in a while that you think they're screaming, no, you got to take it. You got to take it. You absolutely got to take it. I'm going, that's government overreach. That's overreach. Why are you telling me what to do, dude? I'm not telling you to eat pork. I'm not telling you any of that. Why are you telling me I got to take this? And now the wind's blowing the other way in those circles, and they're saying, I never said that, but radio and the internet's forever, dude. You absolutely said it. I was misinformed. I didn't have the right information. Wait a second. You're a national radio host with like 4 hours a day on the radio, plus you got your television show, plus you're a talking head for one of these news channels. You're telling me you don't have a staff to do any research for you? Paul, what's our staff?
Us.
And Matt.
and once in a while, Marla.
Marla, yeah. That's it. And we try to do our research, right? And we count on our listeners and our callers to call in with some research also. Yeah, and
which brings me to a point. I got a call an hour before the show from one of our loyal listeners, Mark, and he asked me to bring something up, and it's a little bit off topic, but
can we bring that up after the break?
I will.
All right. So we got a few minutes because I know that might go a little longer, but yeah, Holden, two things in this. All right, don't be afraid of what the press tells you, because they're trying to stir you up to be afraid so that you give more power to the government to protect you, all right, which power they want to share. Secondly, all right, be able to research. Research is available. If you don't want to use your phone, there's still the libraries out there, all right? If you don't trust AI, I don't trust AI. Scroll down further. Instead of just taking AI's answer, look further. Go to alternate sites. All right, look directly at the law, not what someone's quoting about the law. Look directly at it. And we'll be back in a few minutes.
All right.
Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring their international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at silink.net. That's Papa Sierra Yankee Lima India November Kilo dot November Echo Tango. Join your about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410 Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
listen to Comey when he talked about it.
When he lied about it.
Yes, and it was 8 years ago.
When he committed perjury.
That is correct.
When Brennan committed perjury. When Clapper committed perjury. It's 8 years ago.
That was 8 years.
Is that beyond the statute of limitations?
Correct, and that's what they want.
So that's great. Do you see, this is a game, right?
Right.
Just last long enough, put someone in there long enough that we can outlast the statute of limitations. Now, remember when they created that nice thing to make President Trump that felony charge of whatever, like failure to report on your taxes, failure to dot an I and cross a T, right? It amounted to that, and they made it a felony. And that's what the big thing with Bossberg or whatever was, all right? So now, what's the statute of limitations on conspiracy?
Well, it would be the same statute as the underlying charge itself.
And what about a RICO, you know?
Well, that could go back 7, 10, 20 years.
See, that's the one that they're going to try to get them on. But again, there's at this time, because of everything that happened before, right? It's opening up a massive window of new case law, right? So you're going to have to take something to trial, and it's going to have to make it up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to have to decide on whatever, right? If it's a criminal trial. And they're going to decide, can you charge him with RICO if like enough people got together and collusion, I love that word, got together to ensure and to create an unlawful act, right? They all got together to create a bunch of acts that were one unlawful act. And are they going to be charged with that? I mean, what was it? Nixon with the Watergate tapes? But some people went to prison for that, right?
They did.
Yeah, so it was
Halderman, Ehrlichman, Dean.
And they were charged with burglary, right?
Well, some of them were charged with other stuff too.
Yeah. So, but that was like immediately after. Immediately after that happened.
Well, it was the re-election, 72 election, and it dragged on to 73, 74.
Yeah, but it's not like it happened in 2016. You know, it happened in 2016, and now it's 2025.
Every time they do something, every time they swear an oath, every time that's why this is kind of important. There's going to be congressional hearings coming up. Every time they're sworn in, and that might be a new charge of perjury or a new charge of whatever. But it's also part of a continuing series relating back. It's part of a continuing plan. You can aggregate it together and then get events from the past and then bring them up to the current. That's what that's called aggregation of the charges.
But they would so I'm sorry to interrupt here. But they would need to commit provable perjury again, right?
Well, they are if they go before a committee and they lie.
If they lie, but that means they're going to go before a committee and they're going to do one of two things. Because they're testifying about a crime they committed, they can plead the fifth.
That's true.
Then they don't have to testify. So
Correct.
they don't have to lie again.
If they do.
So they're admitting
that'll be the key. We'll see if they do.
And that's their civil right. That's everyone's civil right, right?
That's correct.
All right. Is you don't have to testify against yourself.
Correct.
I was just out west. A buddy of mine was in some nonsense, right? And I sat there for the jury selection, and then I watched the prosecutor put on their case, right? And the only witness for the defense was my actual buddy there. And I says, man, that prosecution case is shit. You don't even, sorry, is terrible, right? You don't even have to testify. And I'm not the lawyer, but I says, There's no reason. There's no jury in the world that believes the prosecutor's case. But he still testified. But it was his right not to, and the judge would have to admonish the jury, right? Just because he's not testifying doesn't make him guilty. Correct?
Right, but there's another point. If there was nothing there, it shouldn't even got to that. The judge should have dismissed it on a motion for directed finding.
Yeah, you had to be out there. He did. The prosecutor, the defense attorney did motion for that. He absolutely motioned for that. But
and the judge, I bet, said, "No, I want to hear this guy or whatever. I want to hear your case."
The judge wanted to. It was one of those politically connected things, or whatever. And I felt that the judge was a pretty good guy. He seemed even tempered, but of course he's way out west in the hinterlands. He's not in Cook County, right? Being driven nuts by a heavy caseload. Apparently, this was the only felony case for the month, right? And he was being very lenient with the prosecution. I'm not saying he was heavy-handed on the defense, but he was extremely lenient with the prosecution, and that's something from Cook County that I haven't seen. You know, I've always seen that, you know, the defense, it gets more leniency than the prosecution, in my opinion. You being a prosecutor, you might have a different opinion.
Well, when you're coming into a different town, they're not your friend. In fact, the home court goes to the defense when I've actually had. Why are you coming from the big city? So yeah, no, I know how that goes.
But this was the local prosecutor. She was a local. Yeah, I shouldn't say. It was just funny because it was like training day. You know, it was like the judge was there for training day for the prosecutor. But it all worked out well. It worked out the way it should have. You know, the system worked at that time. It's just it cost the guy a bundle of money to have a private attorney to defend him. You know, so
yeah,
that's the sad part is you're pre-punished. All those people from January 6th, even if we'll get back to that, innocent, even if they're innocent, they've been pre-punished. Well,
the other question is you never get your reputation back.
Yeah,
where do you go to get your reputation back?
Okay, so I had a guy that I charged with a felony, and he decided that Cook County offered him a plea deal, and he could have got out in he was in Cook County for 2 weeks. He could have been out. He could have been out. He could have pled to this misdemeanor they gave him, right? And been out. He decided to hold off for trial. He sat there because he's charged with a felony. He sat in Cook County for 2 years. 2 years awaiting trial because it was domestic. They wouldn't give him a bond. He couldn't post cash bond. He couldn't afford it, right? And I'm like, well, he's already served hard time for this case, right? Which was the worst case ever. But what happens if you charge a person with a misdemeanor